So something I find kind of frustrating actually is that
I can't believe you just compared eating meat to that. I've got to be honest with you, the vegans didn't like it when I said it before, but I'll say it again. Why do vegans feel the need to continually remind people they are vegan? Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm here with Jack Hancock. Jack is an activist and a vegan who has quite a successful YouTube channel, I would say. Would you agree?
I don't know, but I appreciate your thought.
So we're here to do something today. I made a tweet recently where I asked for meat eaters and people who aren't vegan to suggest topics that they would like vegans to discuss. So normally we discuss topics that vegans like, but in this special occasion, we're going to do some topics that the non-vegans wanted to see. So I've got these. Let's just jump right in. Let's give the people what they came for. I'll give you the first of.
So what's the format though? Am I just meant to spit some hot fire every time?
Oh sure, yeah, that's exactly it. I'm just going to put it out, and then you can kick things off, or if you want me to kick things off.
You're in this with me, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, we're in together. Yeah. Okay, first one we got here. It's from someone called Jack the Sparrow, and he said the thing about vegans is they wouldn't be here today if their ancestors didn't eat meat. So the point he's making there, I suppose he wants us to discuss is I guess, are we shitting on our ancestors? And the other part, I suppose, is he's saying, well, meat clearly is a necessity if we wouldn't be here without it, I guess is the point he's making.
Yeah, so he's saying vegans wouldn't exist if their ancestors had not eaten meat, which is true.
Right.
If our ancestors wouldn't eat meat, then we wouldn't be here.
Yep.
I guess I would just say that doesn't tell us how we ought to behave. It's also the case that we wouldn't be here if rape didn't exist.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry, is that
we're starting somewhere.
Look,
as
long as it's your channel, not mine. I feel.
Look, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not incorrect. That's the problem. It's offensive, and people will get upset probably. But I mean, disprove it.
I don't think it is offensive. I'm not saying that rape ought to exist. I'm just saying that.
I'm not saying you are saying that. I'm saying that the way that the internet works is that most people they think they just immediately jump to, I can't believe you just compared eating meat to that. That's not what you did, but that's what they do.
We wouldn't be here if violence didn't exist. I think that's very clear. And that wouldn't mean that violence should continue to exist. We can't look at the world and then see how it should exist from what empirically we see. We kind of have to decide our values and how we think things ought to be.
Right, exactly.
I think regardless of what happened to get us up to this point, we should try to make the world a better place to live. And that's why I'm vegan.
Totally. I see where this guy's coming from in that it's because it used to be something that we survived on, and it has been the thing that has created the world we are in today and who we are as a species. That means that we must keep it, which is an understandable position. I get it. I mean, it's like kind of what conservatives believe. They like to keep things as they are because that's what got us here. But the world doesn't work like that. I'm glad it doesn't work like that. I'm glad we find better ways to do things rather than just repeating the same things that our ancestors did. I mean, we have all modern medicine, we have modern cars and air conditioning and Wi-Fi, and aren't all these things amazing? So I think it's good that we keep trying to get better at everything, including how we treat animals, and obviously we can live without doing these things to them now, without meat and eggs and dairy. That's the newest progression of our behavior with animals, so it's a good thing that we avoid it, basically. Yeah.
So, and maybe there's all kinds of biases that are making us more likely to kind of fall into these little traps, like status quo bias.
Right.
Interestingly, when anesthesia was first being proposed to be used in hospitals, there was some resistance to that.
Right.
People were saying, well, pain is natural, maybe it's part of the process of healing, and we shouldn't play God and change these things. I think maybe there's just some resistance we have to new ideas, and so I think it's totally normal to intuitively be is there really anything to this veganism thing? Because most weird ideas that you come across are crazy. Right. And so I think it's totally normal to have some resistance and be able to just play devil's advocate a bit and spit out these different things.
Definitely, and I can see why people think it's crazy, because I mean, look at all the other stuff that's happening. You got the carnivore dieters, you got fruitarians, you got people who claim they don't eat or drink anything and they just stare at the sun. So when all of this is happening, people incorrectly just throw veganism in with all of that, and it's all of these fads and things and all these crazy new ideas. And You can't really blame them when they don't actually know. It just does see on all the papers and all the, they always put them in together. And yeah. I mean, I get it. I get why people get it mixed up.
And also, I guess people's values for being vegan could also be different depending on the person, right? Like for me, it's very simple. It's like, okay, I am concerned with suffering. Turns out that animals are suffering terribly in a huge scale. Being vegan is one of the ways in which we can make a difference to how much that is happening.
Right.
Both from like affecting supply and demand, but also like just from spreading values and bringing it into the conversation.
Definitely.
So
yeah. So Jack the Sparrow, interesting comment, a good one to start with. This is what I wanted, someone giving their honest vibe, their honest opinion and take. Okay, this one's an interesting one. It's a little more simplistic one, I think, from Disco Box, who says, what do the vegans think when they see a meat-based, highly processed burger with suspect ingredients? I suppose a meat-free, I think he was trying to say, or plant-based. So a plant-based, highly processed burger with suspicious ingredients. To me, it's like eating the worst kind of TV dinner and cannot in any way, shape or form be good for a human. I like this question because I think this is something that a lot of people think about vegans. They see the stuff we eat, they see the Beyond Burger, the Impossible Burger, they see all these fake meats and stuff like that made from, different texturized soy protein and all these different chemicals and stuff. And they look at us and they're like, how can you eat that stuff? How does it not make you sick? I think that's a really reasonable point to bring up. I totally get why people get freaked out by it. But what would you say? You eat that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
here,
I'm more
right?
interested in your perspective on this.
I
heard that. I was like, I don't even know where to start.
I do. So I think for me, it's like it's highly suspicious ingredients. This person's saying here, and I understand it's highly suspicious when you've never looked into it. But when you look into what the ingredients are, they're not highly suspicious. They're not dangerous ingredients. If you're in America, maybe they are dangerous. Be careful. But in the rest of the world, we have pretty strict food laws, and you can go and look into all these different ingredients and find out what they are. And usually, vegan meats just consist of a main source of protein, which is usually something like pea or soy or seitan, which is like made from gluten. So they're all perfectly understandable sources of protein. And then you'll find other stuff in them, like some added vitamins and minerals sometimes, which are synthesized and they just, the same thing you get in a supplement. There's nothing scary about that. And then you'll find things like binders to make it all stick together. And that's, I think, where some people get a bit crazy and a bit concerned, because some of these binders have a bad reputation with some of these health influency kind of Instagrammers who want to scare everybody. And this is probably where a lot of the fear comes from. But these binders, they're usually, well, they're plant-based for one. They're usually made from some kind of plant, and they just stick it together, and they're not harmful. They've passed tests, a lot of these things, and they do human trials on these things. They've done human trials on ultra-processed vegan food and found no significantly bad health outcomes with them compared to people who weren't eating. So there's studies done on it and stuff as well if you're concerned about the health. So it doesn't really scare me because I've done that, but I get it if you've not looked into the stuff and you just look at the back and there's a load of ingredients and you just think, oh my God, it must be bad for me. But that's really not always the case. There is stuff with one ingredient that can kill you, and there is stuff with 100 ingredients that'll make you healthier. It's not as black and white as scary ingredients equals bad,
Yeah, or even processed versus unprocessed. I mean, like
even that,
arsenic is natural.
Right, exactly. Arsenic is natural.
But as a general rule of thumb, yeah, sure, more processed is definitely worse, less nutritional value, etc., etc.
Can be. But I mean, you look at something like Huel, the meal drink. Right. That's a highly processed drink you can buy, and it's full of it's the most nutrient dense. Sure. Thing you could eat, Huel. So
when he uses language, the reason I was just like, I don't even know where to start with this is because he's using language like it's suspicious and yeah, you're saying at first because you're saying that he's suspicious in terms of like bad health. But I wasn't sure what he meant. I thought maybe he meant like suspicious in like, is it actually from an animal or like?
Oh, I don't vibe that. I think it's more like, I think it's the thing I said, there's a lot of these influencers, they go to the supermarket, take their shirt off and shout at people or shout at the camera. And it's like, yeah, a lot of these videos get viral and they're shouting at the camera and they're like, this thing, look at this, it's got this in it, and look at this chemical, these chemicals. And it's like, man, every single thing you put in your mouth is made of chemicals.
If you break it down enough, it's gonna look scary, right?
Yeah, for sure. Have you seen the chemical makeup of an apple? It's terrifying. But that's the, so these guys have made a career out of doing that, and unfortunately it's created millions of people who are terrified to eat a vegan burger, when actually, the vast majority of vegan burgers, if eaten in moderation, they're not going to cause you any harm. They're not healthy by any stretch of the imagination, but
a Beyond Burger every now and then isn't.
It's not going to kill you. The beef burger, there are some associated risks with eating beef, and could, depending on, look, if you look at the science here, a lot of the science says that it could well increase your risk of serious disease, so it could kill you. But even if you don't agree with that, let's say someone is like, I don't buy into that WHO sponsored health stuff, I don't buy into it, you just vegan propagandists. Fine, okay, fine. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, the beef burger and the vegan burger, identical in terms of health. Both of them are gonna have the same impact on you. Only one of those is resulting in a cow getting stabbed in the throat. So to me, that's a clear choice. Okay, well, I'll take the vegan one then. If someone's going to claim the vegan one was going to cause more health issues, there is zero evidence of that. That's why I'm saying just assume they're neutral, and we're still going to choose the vegan burger, right? Because of the ethical issues. So that's what I would say to Disco Box. We got one here from Greg. Greg's got a really serious question, and I really hope you're going to be able to help us with this, because I wouldn't know where to start. So it's why do vegans feel the need to continually remind people they are vegan?
Because I want to feel special.
I couldn't agree more.
I want to feel special.
Superior.
Yeah, so like when I first went down like the vegan rabbit hole and learned about animal suffering and slaughterhouses, and I instantly became this like super preachy, annoying vegan. And I can totally understand people looking from the outside in and being like, what the fuck happened to him? But like, because the thing that made me go vegan was the animal suffering. That's the problem that I'm trying to deal with. So, the problem is still existing even if I'm not contributing to it. So sure, maybe it's happening less because I'm vegan, but it's still happening and it still matters. And so I think a lot of vegans feel really compelled to like try and spread the concern so that less animals are suffering like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's look, let's just be real about something. I've said this before, and I've got to be honest with you, the vegans didn't like it when I said it before, but I'll say it again for the people who aren't vegan watching, who probably need to hear this. There are vegans out there for sure who make a deal of being vegan because they want to feel special. And I know we joked about it, but they exist. And I'm not going to pretend they don't exist. And if you ever come across somebody like that, who you feel like, if you're sure of it, that they're literally just trying to like come after you to make themselves feel better, I'm sorry you've faced that, I'm sorry. But that is by far the minority. The majority of people who become vegan, they do not become vegan to feel special or to feel superior. They become vegan because they care about animals, and they're talking to you about it because they care about animals. That's the vast majority, okay? But we can't pretend that there aren't, in every movement, in every good thing in the world, there are going to be people that do it because of narcissistic reasons, right? But it's a minority, and it's the same here. So that's why I talk about it all the time. It's not because I'm a narcissist, that's other behaviors. Not this one though. This behavior, talking to you about veganism and making these videos, is genuinely because I care. That's why, there you go. That's why we need to continually remind people, not that we're vegan, but continually remind them of what happens to animals.
Yeah, I think so.
That's it.
To put it in another context, like when you see religious people who are just on the street, like preaching, trying to convert everybody, and everyone's like, oh my God, these people are so annoying. Yeah. I'm like, respect to these people. Like, they think everyone around them is going to burn in hell for eternity. Like, can you imagine if they were just like, let's just fucking watch TV? Yeah. Like, if you think I'm going to burn in hell because I haven't figured this thing out yet, then like, please tell me.
Yeah, right.
Like, and because vegans see what's happening to animals as serious, because we're not making this up. Like, the situation for animals is extremely dire. This is a moral emergency. It's like so terrible that it completely makes sense that people are like extremely like obsessed with trying to get people to wake up and take this seriously, especially when you're living in a world where it's not taken seriously. It's just this huge blind spot.
All things considered, preachers are pretty chill. I mean, they think you're going to die in hell for eternity. They're pretty chill. And all things considered, if you watch a documentary like Dominion, which we both have, and we've both faced, you've been in farms, I've been in farms, we've both documented farms and seen the horrors. All things considered, us sitting here and having this chill chat, I mean, this is a very, very mature and calm way of dealing with it in comparison to the severity of the issue itself. So just talking about veganism is actually, I get why it's annoying, but realistically, we should be screaming about what's happening to animals. That would be a more reasonable response, would be to be shouting and, I don't know, doing as much as you could, smashing things and trying to get, that would be like the expected response. But we talk about it because we know that's more convincing than smashing things most of the time, right?
Inside, outside I seem very calm, but inside I'm like, fuck!
Exactly.
No, I'm joking.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's right though. Inside, like it's an emotional. It's horrible. And that's.
But it's also like really. It's a very positive thing, I think, being vegan. It feels like I'm in a constant battle about trying to be more intentional in my life and less passive. I feel like that's a battle I'm always going to have, and I think it's the same for a lot of us.
Yeah.
And veganism is something that feels very intentional. I grew up in this culture that's eating these animals and disregarding their well-being, and I've come across arguments to suggest that this doesn't make sense. I can't be consistent with this, and it's causing huge amounts of suffering. And I'm deciding to change. I'm just talking about how amazing I am right now. I'm deciding to change, even though society largely disagrees with that.
Right.
It makes me feel maybe more in control of my life, and also you meet loads of amazing people, and you feel like you're contributing to something that's bigger than yourself. Plus, I'm extremely special because I'm vegan. And I'm handsome. Anyway, now that I've finished my speech about how amazing I am, we can move on to you talking about how great you are.
Oh, how great I am. No, I just agree with everything you said. I got nothing to add. That's it. I mean, what else is there to be said? We said why we talk about veganism, we said why we are vegan. You sold the idea of being a vegan really well. I think people do see it negatively. They do see problems where we see actually being vegan and being in this community. It's actually, like you said, it's good for a lot of reasons. It's good for animals. It's good for you to take control of your life, stop letting the world teach you what's right and wrong, start actually paying attention and learning it yourself. That's a big thing that a lot of vegans, they start with veganism and it teaches them to be more critical of the world, and then they start learning loads of other stuff that makes their life a lot better. Actually, it is a starting point for a lot of people into that way of thinking.
Yeah. Finding out about animal ethics was like a very humbling thing, to think that I had this huge blind spot that I was kind of just accepting or not really thinking about, and ignoring. When once I looked at the arguments, it just seems so obvious actually, and it makes you think, okay, what else could I be wrong about? What else could I be missing?
Right.
And yeah.
So this is from a person called Dean Carson. He said, many vegans argue they are for animal rights, and it's about eliminating cognitive dissonance, which is unusual. We talk about cognitive dissonance in the world because most people say they love animals, care about animals, value animals' lives, but then they choose to eat them and all of their animal products, even when they find out you don't need to. And that then becomes cognitive dissonance. So he's saying many vegans are for animal rights and they want to eliminate cognitive dissonance in that world, which is fine. He says, but they also argue for forced sterilization to drive domestic animal populations into obscurity, which is also cognitive dissonance, he's claiming. So what he's saying here is, by forced sterilization, I suppose he's talking about how we will neuter dogs in the street. For example, wild street dogs that are and cats that are breeding like crazy, we'll try to bring them in and try to sterilize them to reduce their numbers, because they suffer and all the disease and things like that. And I suppose he's also hinting at the fact that if the world does go vegan, then some animals, like domestic animals like cows, pigs and sheep and chickens, which by the way, a lot of people don't seem to know this, they're not wild animals. They've never been wild. These animals, that like the ones that we see in farms, they are domesticated versions of wild animals. They don't exist in the wild in that form. You'll see wild cows, but they don't look like cows in a farm, for example. Same with chickens. And yeah, they won't exist anymore in a vegan world because they will have been, well, we won't breed them anymore. So he thinks that's cognitive dissonance. That's really interesting.
So I feel like there's a lot to unpack here as well.
Yeah,
It's like, let me just describe what my concept of cognitive dissonance was.
All right.
I'm not certain that it's correct. This is how I had it in my mind, that like cognitive dissonance is basically an unpleasant feeling that we get when there's like a contradiction in our beliefs or an action in a belief.
Right.
So like, if someone loves animals and cares about animals, but then a vegan comes along and says, that the fact that you're eating animals means you're causing animal suffering.
Right.
That creates an unpleasant feeling because there's this contradiction in these two things that are both true. It's like I care about animals, but I'm causing them suffering. And so we have an intuitive desire to like reduce that unpleasant feeling.
Right.
And then there are many different ways in which we can do it. Like one way would be to stop eating the animals. Seems like a good way.
That could be a possible solution to this problem, yeah.
But another way would be to like deny that the animals are suffering.
Right.
And there's actual psychological research showing that people do, that when they're expected to eat meat, they assume that animals are less sentient, less intelligent. So they feel better and about negative feelings goes.
Well, that's something been done to humans too, all throughout history, when there's been humans who've been like oppressed by a certain majority. That there's the kind of things they say, oh, well, they're not smart as us anyway.
Yeah, you have to devalue them.
You have to,
feel more comfortable with what you're doing.
Exactly.
So with it, like the second part of his question, when he's saying that like vegans have cognitive dissonance because of like sterilization.
Yeah,
like,
because we want to, I suppose, remove some domestic animals from society.
Yeah.
Such as like, say, for example, if you're sterilizing street dogs, or if you were trying to stop farmers from breeding domesticated cows, I think he says that's cognitive dissonance in us.
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting idea, actually. I haven't thought about. I mean, maybe for some people, they would experience cognitive dissonance if they like value the species still being around.
Right.
But for me, like, and we've talked about this a lot off camera, like I feel like I'm constantly telling you about my values, which must be getting annoying, but like it feels like, yeah, because I feel very confident that what I care about is like the experiences of the animals, and I don't think, it's not like I value the species being there in and of itself, you know?
No, I agree. No, I'm with you. And I think this is where there's a flaw in what Dean's saying here. And I don't think it's cognitive dissonance, actually, because vegans, I don't know, I hope a lot of vegans aren't like this, but from what I can see, people don't go vegan because of an undying love and respect for the species of an animal. They go vegan because they say, hey, look, that's abuse, that's cruelty, that's terrible, that animal suffers. I don't want to do that anymore. That's horrible. I don't want to be responsible for that. And if that ends up with that animal becoming extinct, like as in no longer being bred into existence by a farmer, that's not opposed to veganism. That's actually good, because the only reason those farmers were breeding them was to hurt them and kill them. And the problem is with these species, as you know as well, these domesticated cows, chickens, pigs, and sheep, and also a lot of dogs out in the streets as well, is that they don't do well on their own. And even after, if they don't get slaughtered in a slaughterhouse, if they escape, or a vegan takes them and rescues them takes them to a sanctuary, and people don't realize this, they don't do well domestic, because the way that they've been bred, the way their bodies have been manipulated, they are not supposed to live full lives. So they have loads of problems, like health problems, bone problems. Some of them, even despite the best efforts of activists, end up being unable to walk because they get too heavy. It's just a life full of just horror, even after being rescued. So them being extinct as a species, it's not like you don't hurt a domesticated cow by never breeding them. right?
Yeah, because of the way we've changed their genetics, it's almost like inherent in them that they're going to have a shit life now.
Because you can make it as comfortable as possible, but it's going to be
we're
bad.
optimizing for as much flesh as possible on the chicken breast.
Right, exactly.
As opposed to any concern for the experience of the animal.
Exactly.
Who's going to be dead in 8 weeks or something anyway.
Exactly.
So when you take these animals who are maybe taken out of a physical cage, but they're still trapped inside the physiological cage of their body that we've imprisoned them in.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good way of putting it.
But let me go back. Remind me again of his question.
He was saying that it's cognitive dissonance. Oh. It's because we care about animals so much.
Yeah, so to me, it doesn't make sense to call it cognitive dissonance. But
I think so.
The point of so something I find kind of frustrating actually is that when we point to the suffering of animals, people will say as a justification. I mean, my father said this once,
right?
At least once, that well, what you're saying, you don't want them to be here. You want them to be extinct.
That's the one. That's what he's saying. Basically, he's saying that we're hypocrites basically for that. I think that's what he's getting.
But that's implying that it's like we're doing them a favor
by breeding them in the first place.
Yeah, and you look at what's happening to these animals. Their experience is being completely ignored and neglected. The things we're doing to animals. I mean, I know you know this, but I mean, it's just. If it was happening to your pet dog, it would feel like the most important issue in the planet. Or if it was happening to you, it would certainly feel very important. And it's if we were to these selectively bred Franken chickens that we're bringing into existence, no, it would be very good if we stopped breeding these animals into existence because their bodies just aren't able to have a good experience at this point.
Totally, of course.
People wouldn't accept this in a non-farmed animal context. If it was, if someone was breeding dogs for dog fighting,
right,
and they bred a new breed of dog for dog fighting that was optimized
for
optimized for fighting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you saw people campaigning about it. What would you say that the species wouldn't exist if we didn't breed them. You're saying you want them to be extinct, and therefore we're going to allow all of the suffering of animal fighting to continue for that reason.
Exactly. You wouldn't see people let's get more of these incredibly violent dogs. We don't want the species to die out. That's not a smart idea. You wouldn't see it, like you said.
Yeah.
This person wouldn't be arguing that point in this case. It's only an argument because people want to eat them, basically.
Yeah, or maybe the point about how people might just like to play devil's advocate to try and make sense of things. Maybe. If we're being more
charitable.
Yeah,
for sure. All right, I got one more for us, and there were a lot of other ones, but honestly, there were only a few that I felt deserved a bit more of an open discussion because I think some of them were just honestly just low hanging fruit, and I didn't want to not embarrass, what's the word when you don't want to, I don't want to insult your intelligence, yours or the audience's, because I think most people would have, like I said, we were wasting our time on some of these points. So it's another kind of complicated one, but it's from Dean again, by the way. He likes to kind of put this kind of stuff out there, Dean Carson. He said, I also note an inability to acknowledge that slaughter is a consequence of removing horrendous natural causes of deaths. That's highly reproductive physiology combined with human care necessitates slaughter. So he's trying to make the claim that because there are animals out there that breed a lot, we simply have to slaughter them. It's better than what would happen to them otherwise. Slaughter is better than them dying naturally. This is his point.
Okay. Wait, there was something I was going to say. So okay, because it's kind of funny because people are concerned both with one of your previous questions was suggesting that, vegans want animals to be extinct.
Yep.
And now this one's kind of suggesting that we have to slaughter them or they're going to be dying in other ways.
Yep.
Was it the one?
Yes, same
person?
guy.
No.
Yep, same guy, yeah.
No, you're making this up.
No, same guy, yeah.
Okay, so he believes that he's worried both about
the cognitive dissonance of vegans, that we want domesticated animals to go extinct, or not all of them, but the ones we're breeding for. Actually, I don't know if all. That's another question altogether. That's another topic. But yeah, he thinks there's the cognitive dissonance there that for example, cows would go extinct because we won't breed them anymore. He thinks that's not vegan. We dealt with that. And now he's saying that actually killing animals slaughtering them in slaughterhouses is better than natural deaths.
But is he suggesting that the farmed animals would be dying these natural deaths if we didn't slaughter them?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll let you take that one.
Okay. What Dean seems to have missed, I'm not sure how, to be honest with you. A lot of people, by the way, this is no shade on Dean, because a lot of people make the same mistake, actually. I get this quite a lot. And that's not to, don't want to patronize. I'm just saying I think it's a common misconception, but it does confuse me a little bit, to be frank. So basically, people seem to get the impression that we're doing animals a favor by taking them to a slaughterhouse and killing them humanely in comparison to how they would be killed in the wild. I'll accept that. In comparison to how they would die in the wild, it's pretty damn humane what we do to them, because in the wild, as you well know, they could likely starve to death, have a disease that kills them slowly, or be eaten alive. So what we do to them, comparatively shooting them in the head and quick, somewhat knocking them unconscious and then slitting their throat, is better than a bear eating them from the legs up. We can agree on that, right?
I would add some nuance where, like, because some of the ways in which some farmed animals are dying can be really bad, like the pigs in gas chambers.
Yes. This one specific case with cows, I was sticking to.
Right,
yeah,
like
you're
bolt
totally
gun to the
right.
head and throat slit. Then
compared to being alive.
I would agree.
Then
with
again,
him.
though, this is going to sound really messed up, but gas chambers are absolutely horrific. But a pig in a gas chamber, it could be between 30 seconds and 3 minutes in the gas chamber. But being eaten alive, how long does that take?
It varies. Like some animals would go for the jugular, others would just start biting chunks off your body.
So being eaten from like the legs up would be a lot worse than say a gas chamber. So I'm just trying to, this is really weird, I know, but I'm trying to support his position enough so that we can deal with it.
We at least try to knock them unconscious. Generally speaking, in slaughterhouses, in the wild, there are no regulations.
There are no regulations, exactly. Yeah. So I'm trying to play devil's advocate against myself to be on Dean's side, so that we can start to work. Like, I'm trying to see it from his perspective, right? So I get that perspective. Actually, he'd be right if all we did was simply pluck animals out of the wild and take them to a slaughterhouse. He may have a point. He may have a point that, okay, well, at least it's better than that. I wouldn't agree with it still, but he might have a point. The reality is, though, that he's missed is that these animals would never be in the wild because they've been bred in a farm by a farmer who most likely shoved his hands inside a female of the species and injected them with semen so that they would have babies. And then they live their whole lives in a farm, and then they're taken to a slaughterhouse. So this idea of it's preferable, it's better than a natural death, maybe if they were in nature, which they're not, they're in a farm. So you're not saving them from a natural death. You created them. You said there was no animal. Then you said, oh, let's create an animal. And then you're patting yourself on the back for killing them instead of sending them out to the wild. It's quite an unusual take. I don't know if people understand farming. Like, do they think farmers go out each day and catch wild pigs and cows?
Yeah.
I mean, they don't think that, but it sometimes appears that they might.
Yeah, the reason the animals exist is because we're breeding them into existence. They're not being taken from the wild.
Exactly, yeah.
But Dean knows this.
Well, I don't know why you said that then, but honestly, a lot of people say this. This is not just Dean. Like I said at the beginning, this is a really common idea that people have that, well, if we didn't do this, then they'd get eaten alive, asshole first or whatever it is. And you're like, yeah, that's a horrific way to die, but
it just doesn't work with the meat industry.
Yeah,
the meat industry is there to slaughter them to give us meat. So it's not like they would farm them and then release them to the wild and then they're going to.
Yeah, exactly. Jack, it was great to have you. It's fantastic to sit down and have this conversation. You're a very smart man, and I'm sure the audience will agree. Or maybe not, let him know. Do you think he was wise? Do you think he was smart? Let us know in the comments. Is Jack Hancock a smart man, yes or no? Make sure you get over there and subscribe. Do you want to send people to YouTube and Instagram? I'll put it up on the screen. It's on the screen right now. YouTube and Instagram. Go and check him out on both. Be prepared though, his YouTube channel, you probably find some stuff that might blow your mind a little bit. He talks about some things related to animals that maybe you've not heard before, some concepts. If you're open-minded, check it out. If you're not open-minded, maybe avoid it. I'll let you make your mind up on that one.
Well,
thanks mate. Great to have you, man.
Appreciate it.
And if you want to help me with my vegan and animal rights work, check out the David Ram's Patreon and YouTube teams in the description.